Welcome back to Tea, Toast and Marmalade. I'm here again in my tea room office, and today I'm drinking one of my all-time favourite teas, jasmine. A friend of mine introduced me to this tea some years ago, and ever since then I've acquired a true taste for it. Being from the British Isles, I grew up drinking tea, but in all honesty, I didn't really like it. I went without drinking a full cup of tea most of my life, simply because I preferred not to consume a mouthful of tea leaves. Old habits are hard to get rid of, which is why even today I leave tea in my cup even though I'm using a tea bag for the most part. But as an adult, I must admit, coffee became my go-to, and I must admit again, I just love flavoured coffee and the smell of freshly perked coffee when it fills a room. Do you have a favourite tea? If so, you should let me know, and maybe I will try that one as well. So moving on to today's podcast. If you have a spare journal or notebook, then by all means bring it along with you. You just never know when a profound thought may cross your mind, or some word, or trigger a memory, or maybe you'll have one of those real aha moments. In this podcast, I'm going to touch on a topic that has greatly affected my life and impacted my desire to walk through diligent changes and healing for myself. And before I begin, I would just like to remind you that I'm very new at this podcasting, and I apologize up front again if I make mistakes or stumble over my words, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. The topic is potholes. I know. What are potholes? Well, potholes are those rough spots we hit every now and again that sets us back a tad and sometimes even drags us down for a period of time. Potholes are not depression per se, but rather like temporary traps that we fall into but didn't necessarily see coming. We end up in these potholes when life blindsides us with anything really, big, small, in between. The length of time we are in the trap depends on why we fell in, how fast we can recognize that we are in a trap, and how fast we can implement strategies to get out of it. If you imagine a newly paved road and how smooth it is to drive on or walk on, then out of nowhere, bam, you hit a pothole. That is how it can feel for some of us at times. We're strolling along feeling not so bad, right chipper, and then there it is, a pothole. For the most part, they seem to manage to take us completely off guard until, that is, we begin to recognize the nature of their arrival. Years ago, before healing had occurred in numerous areas of my life, I used to feel like I was always somehow, quite often, in a hole. But at that time, prior to any change or healing in my life, those holes of mine felt more like sinkholes, because they truly felt that big. I could swear that an entire city block could fit in there with me. I found it difficult to get out of them, and that is basically until my life began to change little by little. As time and healing continued, those traps that originally felt like sinkholes didn't feel quite as large anymore. So I began referring to them as potholes rather than sinkholes. Now, potholes is a phrase given to me by a good old friend of mine. I liked it, so I adopted it. My son, after much change and healing, he now refers to these little pit stops as hiccups along the road, I'm starting to feel like that's probably what I will be calling mine from now on. Now, the more healing and change that is made in your life, the better you feel about your life, and the less you feel like you fall into those large sinkholes. You may have already moved on to recognizing them as potholes, and maybe, just maybe, there has been enough change and healing in your life that you now call them hiccups as well. Regardless of what you call them, they are common. Even 90% always happy people hit those blah days here and there. So, what causes potholes? Numerous things. I can give you a list of possibilities here. However, the more you pay attention to the arrival of potholes in your life, as well as the circumstances surrounding their arrival, you will begin to see the causes for yourself. So let's look at some of the causes, and maybe I just say again that there are way more than I've listed here, and if you care to share what I did not mention, then please feel free to let me know. I am not going to go into depth with each one of these causes during this podcast, as we most likely will touch on them during future podcasts. So here are 10 of my top picks for possible causes of temporary traps. Sleep. Sleep plays a huge part in how you feel on a day-to-day basis. The body has an internal clock of its own and feels the tension when not aligned with that internal clock. Just ask shift workers, because they can definitely tell when their body is on a shift other than days. The body also needs recovery and rejuvenation time, which should be uninterrupted for the most part. Without the time allowed to recover and rejuvenate, the body remains fatigued and has that overall sense of exhaustion. So sleep is vital in our daily health regimen, and is probably the first and foremost thing to visit or consider when looking at possible pothole causes. Second, I have here food. Now, I never used to believe that food could cause mood swings, mood changes. But when I was younger, I remember my mother saying, "Don't give your dad those tiny pickled onions, as they always put him in a bad mood." I remember thinking at the time, that is so stupid. And yet, as time and maturity imparted its wisdom into my life, I have since had the change of thought regarding food and its ability to affect mood. When we think about it, though, food does affect us. It affects our sugar levels, our digestion, our bowel movements, our headaches, our sleep, our hearts, and so on. It therefore makes sense that food very well could be a consideration when we are pondering what may have given us that little kick into the pothole. Next up, number 3, alcohol and drugs. This is a well-known consideration because the effects of drugs and alcohol are widely documented. Alcohol is a known depressant, and that depression can trigger during this drinking stage itself, or it can come in the day after when the drinking has stopped. The effect of alcohol is a highly accurate possibility for the mood shift that dropped us into a pothole. While I mention alcohol first, its rival for attention is the use of any form of drugs, whether they be prescription drugs not taken correctly, or street drugs, or any other form of product that causes a superficial high. It is not hard to make sense of it when we understand the law of nature. Whatever goes up must come down, and down indeed we go into the pothole. Health issues can cause incredible grief, and news of new and or more difficult health issues can send us into that pothole. Some of our health issues we may be able to help ourselves, while other health issues indicate our need to reach out for medical assistance. It's a contender. Number 5 is events. Traumatic events or overwhelming circumstances out of our control can be a huge trigger when it comes to potholes. In these situations, we may need some added time to recover from the event or the circumstance that took us off guard. Number 6, poverty. Financial stress and lack of funding to actually change the things we want to change can easily put us in a pothole and actually keep us there, or a sinkhole, and keep us there for a longer period of time. Depression. Now, depression, yes, on the onslaught of a longer period of depression can launch us into a pothole that takes much longer to get out of. So while other causes may trigger a downward spiral in our mood state, depression, especially when medication has been altered or changed, can reveal to us a period of sinking into the pothole. Now, words and actions of others, number 8. If we are honest, we can bear the truth openly in that we are indeed affected by the words and the actions of others, whether we are completely aware of it at the time, or even if somebody else is aware that their actions and their words are triggering us into a spiral pothole. It doesn't really matter. I know from experience that hearing something said about us is not a happy thing, especially if those words and actions are hurtful. We are hugely affected by others in our environment, and even by others who may not be directly in our environment. And I just want to make mention here that also watching and listening to others living their lives, going places, doing things, successful at almost everything they touch, when you don't really have a life you are happy with, can send you into a pothole. It is an indicator of how unhappy we really are with the life we are living. There may be a part of us that wishes we could be happy for them, but if you spend time always being the listener without having much in the way of excitement to share of your own, this is a true and vital contender for the reality of the pothole you may fall into. Number 9, loneliness. Feeling alone, feeling like you don't belong in the world, can harm us on a very deep and secret level. Loneliness affects our thoughts, our feelings, our energy, and our desire to live, which in turn affects our entire world. Rejection is number 10. Rejection is huge. It is by far the most curable disease out there, and if at any point in our lives we have been rejected, abandoned, then those wounds are open triggers for a great many other emotional reactions. Now, I have down here number 11, but I list some stuff there. So number 11, other possibilities for falling into a pothole are things like too much responsibility, unrealistic expectations that we place on ourselves, control, abuse, not having a voice, rules and regulations that feel like they are suffocating to us. So there I have my list. So just a reminder, that list is not complete by any stretch, but it does, however, give us thinking and observing ideas in the right direction. During our days of change and healing, we will see, as I did, that there is a definite movement forward away from the sinkhole to the pothole feeling, and as we continue on, we will eventually end up with a few hiccups along our path. Now, having been alerted to the idea and the existence of potholes, we can see the need for change and healing. Therefore, let us begin by paying a much closer attention to the situations and the elements around the potholes. When you first find yourself in a pothole, here are some questions to ask yourself. What happened? Did anything change? Could you actually feel it coming? And which of the possible causes we've listed here are applicable to your temporary trap? Were some other causes applicable to your temporary trap? Write them down in your notebook. Number 5 here, if you are in a pothole right now, might I suggest you pull away from the world with your tea and your comfy chair just for an hour or so and write in your journal your truth and what you think truly put you there. Please remember this. What affects you may not affect the next person. Therefore, it is very important to view our lives and our circumstances through our own lens. That means through the honesty and the truth that is real to us, nobody else. No other input except your own raw truth. Once we have begun to wake up and identify the causes and maybe changes in the world around us that affected us enough to slip us in to that pothole, we can then begin a solid road to change and healing. For me, these potholes came around quite often during different stages of my life. Yet it wasn't until I could actually identify the causes that change became a permanent option. The true causes are the culprits, and therefore the focus of attention. I will leave you here for now and let you continue on with your day and your tea. We will meet again soon, and we will look at other topics that move us towards healing and change. But remember as you go that your wings display your beauty, and you need those wings to fly. God bless you, and bye for now.